and welcome to Security Analysis. I am Uday Bhaskar. The focus this week is on Kargil, the war of 1999, the brief war, if I may add, which was recalled last week in a very emotive way by those who were directly impacted during Kargil 1999. Families that lost their loved ones, military units that participated in that war, veterans who paid homage at the National War Memorial, those who were injured, and of course, the professionals who have been following that particular war for whatever lessons it may have for India in terms of its higher defense management. But today, 20 years later, more than 20 years later, it's a moment for reflecting over the Kargil war and perhaps to cluster some observations that would be relevant in our recall. And to help us place this in context and illuminate some of these aspects, I have great pleasure in introducing and welcoming one of India's most illustrious generals, Lieutenant General Satish Nambiar. He was commissioned in the Maratha Light Infantry and has seen action from 1965 onwards in that Indo-Pak War. Subsequently, in 1971, the war for Bangladesh, he was awarded a gallantry award, the Veer Chakra. Later on, he retired from the Indian Army, having held the high office of Director General Military Operations, as also the Deputy Chief of Army Staff. During his career, General Nambiar was also the force commander of a United Nations force in the erstwhile Yugoslavia, a responsibility that he conducted with aplomb. It wasn't easy, if I may add, but that's another story. Post-retirement, General Nambiar headed the USI, India's oldest think tank, the United Service Institute, with great distinction again. Satish sir, welcome to Security Analysis.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Sir, I wanted you to help us really recall the Kargil war. It's a war that you have followed in more ways than one. You have written about this. I recall one of your articles in recent years where you had said that Kargil was won on the backs of the young officers, the brave men, and that perhaps as you go up the ladder, there were many inadequacies, and those, of course, have been identified piecemeal. Personally, as a security analyst, I've often felt that we need to draw the equivalent of the appropriate observations. I don't want to talk about lessons because that is something that I'm sure that the Army is doing in its own manner. So also the other services. But I just want you to reflect on Kargil, if I may put it that way. And later on, I will request you to look at some other strands, including this whole question of how is the history of a war recalled and recorded. But before I come to that, sir, your reflections, observations about Kargil in 2021. Satish sir.
Well, Uday, thank you very much. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be with you. And more importantly, it's an honor to be talking about this issue of the Kargil war at this time when we celebrate the what I would term the retrieval of a very bad situation that we faced in 1991. And I say this with some feeling because I think any discussion on the subject of the Kargil War of 1999 must start with an acknowledgement and a tribute to the outstanding performance of our junior leadership and men of the Indian Army and, of course, the air warriors who went into action in due course. It was an absolutely outstanding performance, superlative, I would say. You can't, quantify it. It's that good. And I say this with great feeling because, as you mentioned, I have seen battle myself. And I don't think any other army in the world would have been able to do the sort of, or engage, conduct the sort of operations that our youngsters and the men did in 1991. And I say this with great feeling because I've had the privilege of serving and seeing, I did my staff college in Australia, I was with the training team in Iraq, I was a military advisor at the High Commission of India in London, and finally, as you mentioned, the force commander and the head of a mission in the former Yugoslavia, where incidentally I had uniformed personnel from about 34 countries of the world under my command, which is quite a unique opportunity. So when I say that, our performance of our youngsters and the men was incomparable and hardly can be matched, I say that with that sort of a background and feeling. And it is, I think it would be something which we must continue to acknowledge, which we are doing so. But having said that, I think in my view, we would be doing a great injustice to the efforts of those gallant young people, those who laid down their lives, made the supreme sacrifice in the service of the nation, officers and men, and also those who are still around among us. Some of them are probably maimed for life, that sort of stuff. I think it's something which we owe to those who fought that war to get the perspective right on that war. And here I think the reason why I make this point is because it is at this stage that we can, do something to shall we say, get the perspective of that operation right. Because today, as you and I speak, it is the young officer, let's say, who had about 10 years or so of service at that time, rifle company commanders and whatever their equivalents in the other arms and services and in the Air Force, who are into the 2-star category now. They're getting their promotions as major generals. And the chaps who were probably young captains or lieutenants are probably picking up 1-star level ranks and all. So they are the people who have to see the Indian Armed Forces through in the future. And if they get have got their perspective of those operations right, I say with great feeling that they must and will, I have no doubt, make sure that the youngsters in future operations are at least given an even chance, if not more, than the youngsters got in 1999. I think this is one of the major points that one would like to make.
Now, let me, pause you here and just hold that thought, because I think this is very significant when you talk about perspective and the fact that the young officers of that period are now knocking at 1-star, 2-star, and they would be asked to assume greater responsibilities professionally. But to me as an analyst, and I do want to add that I am an armchair analyst, I have not seen action in the manner that you have, but yet I would say that as a student of India's military history, I have been following Kargil fairly closely. And we are all aware that soon after the war, Prime Minister Vajpayee had enabled the setting up of the Kargil Committee. It was headed by the late Mr. K. Subramaniam. It also had Mr. Varghese, George Varghese, again, the famous, well-known editor who's no more with us, and General Hazari, if I remember right. And they submitted this report, and there were certain, I would say, broad recommendations. It was a report that was confined to Kargil. I don't want to get into the detail of Kargil. I'm coming back to your point about perspective. As a citizen of India, as somebody who has an interest in security, as somebody who has been in uniform in the Navy, one cannot but help draw attention to the fact that Kargil 1999 was seen as an event when the Indian military, the Indian establishment was surprised. It was caught off guard for various reasons. Now, there is a deja vu when we talk about Galwan 2020. So, in our recall, in our observations, do you think that there has been something that is lacking? Because if the same event occurs, maybe in a different way, I mean, one could say perhaps Mumbai 2008 could also be brought into the same basket. So it's in that perspective that I would request you to perhaps share some of your observations again about the management of national security challenges where the army is the lead service. Satish sir?
Yeah, well, Uday, I'm a bit reluctant to now get drawn into discussion of the recommendations of the Kargil Review Committee and all that, because I mean, it's a whole, you open up a whole can of worms. And I'm not sure that that's the purpose of today's discussion, because I think we are talking basically of the battle or the war as it was fought. But there is, I mean, obviously what you have said carries with you a lot of it. We were taken by surprise. I don't know. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, except that when I speak of this and, say that it's with a great deal, among other things, which probably I'm not too sure too many of you or your viewers or would know, I was the chairman also of the Battle Honours Committee for Kargil. So I'm better aware than many of my colleagues and others about what went into that operation, because the Battle Honours were awarded on the basis of the recommendations that we made at that time. And this is why I would like to focus on the point I made earlier in context of the query that you have raised. I think what is more important, there's no doubt we were taken by surprise and did not, in fact, probably react adequately, because we were not too sure in the initial stages of the degree to which the Pakistanis had infiltrated and occupied the posts and things like that. And that is why I think it's important for these young colleagues of ours who are picking up these ranks in the hierarchy of the armed forces, that while preparing for the future in the cold reality of the operational planning rooms at various levels, they must recognize some of these things. For all the chest thumping and breast beating and all that about what we achieved in 1999, what was it really? It was really the recovery of posts that should never have been lost. That's what it was. And at what cost? About a battalion worth killed, 2 battalions worth injured or maimed. I mean, that's a hell of a cost, because the sort of operation we conducted to retrieve those posts which we had lost through, I don't want to start pinning blame on anyone on it. Can happen. It has happened over the years historically. So when it happens, but then we cannot allow that sort of thing to be repeated.
Happen again.
And one of the major reasons why people like me who've been through other operations, as you said, 65, 71, the tragedy was we went on, put these youngsters battering up those mountaintops to retrieve what we had lost. That's not the way we should have fought it. Now I think even those who were in the hierarchy at that time acknowledge it. The war should have been fought as, in the operational, the tactical battle, whatever. But those are the lessons that should be, taken into account when our colleagues who are running things today start preparing. They must give the youngsters an even chance, as I said, if not more, which is what I'm afraid the youngsters in Kargil were not given that, but they produced the goods. That is what I think we have to admire among those who did it. But those who made the supreme sacrifice, as I said, and others who are still among us.
So absolutely, sir. I think on that, as I fully agree with what you're saying, and let me also add my own felicitations and commend both the Indian Army and the air warriors who took part in Kargil. And I think many of them in different ways, those who were actually on the scene, those who were behind the scene, they all played their role, I think, admirably, and really were able to turn around what was clearly a very, very difficult situation. And I think we cannot ignore the fact that one of the most distinctive features of Kargil was the nuclear overhang, meaning that in the preceding year, 1998, India and Pakistan had both demonstrated their nuclear weapon capability. And I think that added a very complex dynamic in terms of how that brief war unspooled. But sir, I want to actually draw you to another area, which is progressively every year in the run up to Kargil, July of every year since 2000, I would say, we have had the war being recalled by those who participated in different ways. Sometimes it was families, those who lost their loved ones. Sometimes it is a professional recall of a very small incident, which those who were there may have decided that they would share it, perhaps even after they had retired from the service. In the last 2-3 years, I've been tracking some of this, I've been collating it. And I think this gallantry and this professionalism comes across in a very, very, I would say, both stark and at one level tragic manner. Recently, I was reading about a Gorkha battalion that was on its way down from the Himalayas, wherever they were posted. And they had surrendered their winter clothing, in the sense they had deposited back and they were coming down to a peacetime location. And in that transition, they were asked to turn around. I think it was the first 11, if I remember right, but that's only one anecdotal recall I have. Despite the logistic constraints, no clothing, they were there for whatever period because they were asked to carry out a certain tactical task. And I'm only mentioning one as a student, as an observer. You as the chairman of the committee for the Gallantry Awards would know more. So have these kind of, I would say, gaps been in a way addressed at whichever level? Because these challenges are going to continue for the Indian military. Satish sir?
Yeah, well, let me correct you on one point there. I was the chairman of the Battle Honors Committee. That was not for Gallantry Awards. That was for the battle honors to the units that participated in the war. You know, battle honors and theater honors that were awarded. This is not the Gallantry Awards.
Okay.
But since you touched on the Gallantry Awards, I think it's important to make the point, because I've also read a number of pieces here and there where, you know, comments have been rather made quite without, I think, adequate thought about, Kargil, though it was such a small operation, the number of awards far, I think exceeded the sort of duration and the nature of that war and all, which I think is, it's quite unfair. I mean, in no other war, as I said, I've been through 65, I've been through these sort of actions that these young guys, officers and men, went through merits that sort of, because you made them perform those feats of courage and bravery, which, in 1971, we got around the Pakistanis and was unhinged them by sitting at the back and make those guys come out of their trenches and tackle us and all that. That's, the ideal way of fighting the war, that would be. But these youngsters, this is what, and therefore, if we have recognized those acts of bravery and courage and valor with, even if the number of awards were far exceeding the sort of the type of war it was, I think we shouldn't even be thinking of talking about. This is the sort of thing that I would like to stress. So therefore, the emotional content also of the families, one of my own regimental officers, I think his son, Colonel Thapar's son, Vijayan Thapar, is one of those who got an award, and his last words and things are all carved in stone, I think, at places that matter.
No, sir, absolutely. I think the effort there was superhuman, if I could put it that way, in terms of what the officers and the men had done. But we segue into another aspect of Kargil, sir, and this is a larger point about India and its recall and documentation of wars. Now, again, I'm saying this as a security analyst, somebody who studied this. We're all aware that when it comes to 1962, the Henderson-Brooks report is still under wraps. You would have seen it as the DGMO, I'm sure. And there is the equivalent of a version in the public domain on some websites. Kargil is 1999. To date, we do not have the official history in the public domain. I gather it is still a work in progress. But as a result, in the last 20 years, there have been what I would call as certain personal interpretations depending on where the author was, either on top of the ladder or at different levels. You've also been director USI. The USI has a very, very, I would say, professionally high quality historical cell, and they've done some great work that I'm aware of, to the extent that I have tracked and followed their work. I have benefited from what they've done. What do you see as, again, your observation about India's approach to military history? Because if we don't get it right, then I'm afraid I take the liberty of saying this to you, that our perspective is likely to get distorted. Satish sir?
Uday, I mean, you've touched a raw nerve, really, because I think, I mean, I'm equally culpable, because as I right through till I, in fact, went as MA to London and saw the manner in which the British tried to, preserve their history and all that. I couldn't get it. I never bothered. I once learned history because you had to prepare for staff college, learning military history and all that sort. But we never had that sense of, it hasn't been inculcated in us while in the, studying in the academy and things like that. We need to. There are people with a great sense of history among us, and they've done a marvelous job. And here, it's important to make this point. As the director of the United Service Institution of India, it was my great honor and privilege to set up a Center for Armed Forces Historical Research at the center, which is now thriving and doing a great job. I hope it continues to do the same. You talked of these various reports. The Henderson-Brooks report, you're right, as the additional director of General Military Operations, I was tasked by the then Chief General Sharma to get hold of that report from the Ministry of Defense, study it, and to come up with whether the lessons that were learned at that time were applied in Sri Lanka, because that was the time we were pulling out of Sri Lanka, of Pavan and all that. So I've read that report. Obviously, since it is still classified, and I don't know, I presume I'm still bound by the terms of the Official Secrets Act or something like that. I won't go into that. But the fact of the matter is that I think most of its contents are out in the public domain anyway. And why it is under wraps, don't ask me, because way back in 1991, as the DGMO, when a reference was made to our directorate by the history division of the Ministry of Defense, whether the histories of 1962, 65, and 71 and all Pavan could be cleared for publication. After a brief discussion among ourselves, we had no hesitation in clearing it. We said, go ahead, there's nothing in it which will impact on future operations. As far as the MO is concerned, the Military Operations Directorate is concerned, it's cleared. But it wasn't cleared. And I have the privilege of having some more experience of this aspect and can therefore share it with you. Later, I was part of that committee, which was chaired by Narinder Vora, and together with, I think, one of those former historians in the history division of the Ministry of Defense. The three of us were tasked to study these publications. 1962, 65, 71, and Op Pavan, and recommend to the government of India. It was a committee set up by the government of India, whether it could be published. And we studied it, we consulted various people, and said it must be published. Because if you do not put these out in the public domain, firstly, people talk without proper knowledge of it, which is bad for the system. And there again, there are, after all, historians and analysts contribute so much to our, thoughts on, that you have to. These are what form the basis of many of the decisions that are taken in future. So this, I think, is a very serious deficiency in our
In
system.
terms of
And the sooner we rectify it, the better.
Sir, thank you actually for drawing attention to this point about the role played by academics and military historians and analysts. Without trying to pat myself on the back, lest I get a crick, I do want to add that soon after the Kargil War, I was then in the IDSA, the Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses. I was the deputy. And under the leadership of Air Commodore Jasjit Singh, late Air Commodore, our director then, we published the first, I would say, comprehensive volume from public domain information. We did not have any access to what was within the system, but we were able to produce an edited volume. And for a long time, it had served a useful purpose for the citizens of India in just informing them. But I think, again, sir, you have in your own inimitable way drawn attention to a very, I would say, critical strand in India's recall of its military history, whether it is recent, as is the case with Kargil, or even if we go back further. And I think your broader point about the perspectives that should be handed down to the younger generation is something that I think is a significant takeaway. But as always, sir, it's a great pleasure talking to you because you have such a deep water table, not only as far as matters military are concerned, but I think you've also had the opportunity to look at the more complex domain of where the military engages with the civilian leadership, not only in India, but you have dealt with the United Nations, which means that you were dealing with the major parts of the Security Council. And therefore, I think whatever you have said in your very, very prudent and your choice of word and phrase, it was not my intention to open a can of worms. I hope that we would be able to do that, because my real submission to people like you is that you have so much to share. And since the official machinery for history is so, shall we say, inadequate, I often urge people like you to share your own biographies, to write it down. And if nothing, technology allows you now to speak into a machine so that the younger generation would benefit. Whether you talk about your 65 role as a young captain, your action with the Jangi Paltan in 71, or what you did in Yugoslavia, I think each of them, and you're not alone, there are many other illustrious generals of the Indian Army who have had their own, shall we say, rich experience. But on that note, Satish sir, thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And I hope we will have a chance to welcome you back again on this show. On that note, there are many strands to Kargil 1999. What we have touched upon is only the tip of the iceberg. As a country, we hope that the official version of Kargil would soon be placed in the public domain. And if it does, we will definitely have a discussion and get Jan Nambiar back. Thank you for watching Security Analysis. We will be back again next week. Jai Hind.
Sure.